Guinness, District Masonic Relations Officer for District 16 of the Grand Lodge of Texas. We're here at Tyler Masonic Lodge in Tyler, Texas today to interview someone who it was once said about that has more titles than a used car lot. We're here talking with the most worshipful Grand Master for 1980, Sam E. Hillburn. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you.
Let me ask you first, as I read some things about you, you're very successful in your profession, very successful in your personal life. You've got a wife and grandkids and kids. You've been very successful in your church. A lot of things in life. You've had a lot going for you for a lot of years. But somewhere along the line you made a decision about Masonry. Why Masonry? Why did you take that first step?
Sometimes this is really a hard question to answer, but in my hometown of Midland, I knew quite a few people who were Masons. My wife's father was a Mason. He got back in the days when it was awfully hard to get into a lodge, even with the end of your finger cut off, which he had. And he told me I could never get in, which only whetted my appetite a little bit more. So I did apply for the Mysteries of Freemasonry, and the District Deputy Grand Master would have turned me down because of an old tore-up left arm. But he said, if you'll go see the Grand Master, I'll make arrangements. So I did. The Grand Master was in Fort Worth at that time. Most worshipful Hugh Craig. And I went to see him, met with him one morning in his office one Saturday morning. The course of that conversation was such that I'll never forget it. He pointed to my chest and said, it's not what you've got on the outside, it's what's in there that makes you a Mason. You can go on back and I'll tell the lodge they can vote on you. And they did, and fortunately I was elected. So I guess that is the history of my becoming a Mason, or why I wanted to become a Mason, because I could see a lot of things that were being done that I liked by Masonic friends of mine. So I thought it'd be good to be a part of it.
What about the climb to the Grand East? It's a long way from that EA degree to the Grand East. What about along the way and how that all happened and how you got pointed that direction or interested in that?
I really don't know. When I became a Mason, you mentioned from the EA to the Fellowcraft to the Master Mason's degree, I never even thought that I would be privileged to serve as Master of my lodge. But finally, that happened. That whetted my appetite to a very great extent to perhaps serve the fraternity more if the opportunity presented itself. I started my Masonic career, as far as Grand Lodge activity is concerned, in the Masonic Education Service Committee. And went from there to various other Grand Lodge duties that were assigned me. I was always willing to do just about what I was needed to do. During that time, however, I was spending an awful lot of time in the York Rite and Grand Commandery and going through the 11 years that it took me to go through the Grand Commandery line. I visited, I suppose, just about, I visited every commandery in the state and many other lodges, and got to be pretty well known around the state as a result of that. First thing you knew, I was talking about wanting to be a Grand Lodge officer, and with a lot of help, I did. I was elected to the Grand Lodge line. It has been a tremendous experience for me down through the years to be able to serve my Grand Lodge in that capacity.
After you reached the Grand East, and your grand year was 1980, a lot of things going on, as there always are during anyone's year in the Grand East. What were some of the things that you wanted to accomplish when you got there? You had plenty of time to think about it before you got to the Grand East. What were some of the things that you got after when you got there?
I think primarily was the Masonic education program, which we reworked during that year. We put it on tape, the voice being that of Jack Kelly, and we put out a film entitled Texas Masonic Heritage, which I was real proud of, and I used it in the workshops around the state. To pick out a particular happening or incident that stands out above everything else, I really can't think of anything that would be considered outstanding in my year. I served the craft the best I could during the year as Grand Master, but I'm not sure that I was able to serve it any better than anybody else did before or since. There is one thing I remember that I had to do when I was Grand Master that I'll never forget. I had to remove a Master of a Lodge from that position because of his, what I considered to be unmasonic conduct. And that, of course, was discussed in Grand Lodge by grievances and appeal and was brought to the floor, and my decision was upheld in that regard. That was the one thing that I regret during the year. Everything else was completely pleasant all year long, with tremendous help from all the district deputy Grand Masters and the officers. It was a year, of course, that any Grand Master will never forget.
Did you have, either at that time or on the way up, any well, maybe frustrations is not exactly the word I want, or disappointments, or a program you wanted to get started that didn't quite fire off the way you wanted it to, or that sort of thing? There's always something like that maybe you wish you would have got that through and just didn't have time, or it didn't happen.
I think that any Grand Master, particularly when he has finished his service in the East, looks back and wonders what he could have done better, or what he might have accomplished had he done something different. I can't really think of anything that I would have liked to have done any different than I did. When it was all over, I felt like, well, I've just done a so-so job. Perhaps I could have done the job a lot better. But I can't put my finger on any particular thing or any particular reason why I felt that way. It was just that I felt like I could have done a better job. But I had no particular program that I was disappointed with at all. The support during the year, as I mentioned a moment ago, was terrific. And of course, our Masons naturally honor the office. It doesn't make a difference who is in there. And so you naturally would have all that support. But the programs that we utilized that year, I think, were successful, but nothing outstanding, nothing unusual. I tried to make myself available to every small lodge in the state that wanted me to appear. I felt like the bigger lodges were able to take care of themselves. So most of my year, so far as my travels were concerned, were spent with the smaller lodges.
Talking about that support, and I know it's awfully hard to go back and think of just all of the people involved, but I'm sure there's some individuals who all helped in that year.
We had, of course, everybody has some close friends, naturally. Fireman Benson, who interviewed the first two interviews, was the interviewer regarding the first two interviews that apparently were unsuccessful. Furman was a big help. Of course, he was Grand Master when I was elected junior warden, as I recall now, and was a big help to me, particularly that year and after he got out. I relied a great deal on his expertise and his knowledge. But there were so many people, so many friends. Of course, Jack Kelly was just coming along. He was my grand orator, and he was a big help to me in every area when I needed him. But all the grand officers, of course, were. But so far as the help is concerned, now, I've also got to mention a brother who's now past Grand Master, Brother Bob Scott. We made a sachet through East Texas. And what we might look back now as a political drive when I was getting ready to run for the South. I was elected to the Grand Lodge that year as a result of the travel through East Texas and other places. People like Bob and Furman up in the north, and various past Grand Masters throughout the state. Bob Dillard, of course, was a big help to me because I served as his district deputy Grand Master back in 1962 when he was Grand Master. We were both serving as president of our school boards, our respective school boards at that time, so we had a lot in common. Bob and I have been close friends ever since. But sitting here at this particular moment and trying to pick out those men who sort of stand out in your mind, really kind of hard to do because there's so many.
You have your chief helper with you today, your wife. Now's a perfectly good time as any to really get some points, but what can you tell us about her and her help and her involvement in all this masonry and all that it involves that a wife has to do?
In a way, I think she got it started because when I was filling out my petition, I lacked one Masonic signer who lived in Midland at that time. She took my petition down to the druggist, a person we both knew. Frankly, I didn't even know he was a Mason, but he knew me. She took that petition down and got him to sign it. I turned it in, of course. But, of course, we've been married over 50 years. 50 years last June. Last June the 6th. We'll soon be married 51 years. I figure that if she can manage to put up with me for that length of time, we'll probably make it the rest of our lives. Anyway, she's been very helpful and has encouraged me in everything I wanted to do. When I was going through the Grand Commandery line, of course that took a tremendous amount of time. 11 years. And when I was going through the line of the Imperial Council of the Red Cross of Constantine, the United Grand Imperial Council it's called, she was very, very helpful and traveled with me everywhere. Except, of course, when I first started in the Grand Commander line, the kids were still at home, boy and two girls. Naturally, she had to stay home quite a bit. But latter years in Grand Commandery and in the line of the United Grand Imperial Council, and then, of course, all of my work that I've done in the York Rite and the Scottish Rite, she's been very helpful and has always traveled with me. It wouldn't be worth it if she couldn't come.
Talking about some of these other things you're involved with, you have proved that there is life after the Grand East, and in a big way. You're Sovereign Grand Inspector General for the state of Texas. You've been involved in, as I said, I read your resume, and it was a lengthy read on all the different things. And tell us about some of those projects, not necessarily just right now currently, but along the way since the Grand East that have been close to your heart and things that you've really been involved with?
I think that my service to Masonry through the Masonic Home and School has been a highlight of my Masonic career, no question about that, to work with the kids. And of course I was privileged to be elected to the board, and then have been on the board ever since, and I enjoy serving Masonry in that capacity. I've been asked many times why I've given so much time to the Masonic fraternity, and the reason is pretty obvious as far as I'm concerned, is that I'm one of those individuals who could possibly never have become a Mason. Having done so, I felt like I owed the fraternity quite a bit of my time if the opportunity presented itself for me to serve. But the home is a great part of my life, and the Scottish Rite Hospital for Children. After I became Sovereign Grand Inspector General, and then later on became chairman of the board of the hospital. That's a tremendous area of service which has meant so much to me, and always will, as a matter of fact. I don't think that anyone can serve Masonry better than serve children and perhaps the youth organizations. I've been chapter dad of the Rainbow, for example. And at the same time, my wife was our mother advisor of the Rainbow. So we both worked with the kids in those areas. But right now, although I still work in New York Rite, I'm Grand Treasurer of the Grand Encampment of Knights Templar and the Knight Templar Eye Foundation. The Scottish Rite is my priority. I enjoy the activities of the Scottish Rite. And I wish I had more time for other areas like the Texas Lodge Research, for example. Being a past master of that, I would like to give more time to that, but being Sovereign Grand Inspector General is a full-time job in an Orient the size of Texas with 9 valleys to look after. It's a full-time job. And when I can do other things like coming to Tyler and participating tonight over here at the shrine, that's just a bonus as far as I'm concerned.
A lot of Masons will be viewing this interview in the future, and I've got to ask maybe for them more than myself or anybody, but being on the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite, Sovereign Grand Inspector General, is a great honor, and it's a rare thing. How does that feel? How do you feel about it?
I don't feel any different than anybody else. I'll give you an example. There at the Scottish Rite Hospital one time, in the auditorium, after our annual trustee meeting, which takes place in January, somebody said something about it. Here's the boss. And I said, well, I'm really nobody's boss. All you got to do is ask my wife and my secretary. You're right. It is an honor. It is an honor to serve as the SGIG in the state. But that doesn't put me in any position that makes me feel any different than I ever felt before. It's a job to do, and I'm proud to do it. It's just that simple.
Along the lines of Scottish Rite, York Rite, the Shrine, there's some things going on in the state, and I'm sure there will be for years to come to make sure all the organizations dovetail together and work hand in hand. What do you see, in your opinion, what is the future of those organizations and their working together and Masonry in Texas, and Masonry in general, if you'd like. I know there's a lot of people concerned about the numbers are dropping off, and there's several concerns about our fraternity from the Blue Lodge on up. How do you see it?
It is a very serious concern, the dropping in membership. This applies to all the Masonic bodies and affiliated bodies as well as the Shrine. We try to find the answer as to why. There are lots of answers. No one answer. The economy's got a lot to do with it. And we're not in a period of time when people feel the need for spirituality like they do perhaps during time of war, when our numbers were so great, and right after the war when they were so great. The economy, the turning away from moral values and family values has hurt Masonry as a whole. I see us now moving back in the direction of family values and Masonic values. Those values which really mean character for an individual. I see more people coming into Masonry who are looking for that and not particularly looking for a good time. And I'm talking about young men that we really need. There are those prophets of doom. I don't share that feeling. Masonry will always be here, but it must be a Masonic fraternity that is completely united, and it must be more of a family fraternity, a fraternity in which we bring our families into our activities, because Masonry has no secrets, and we might just as well make it a family organization so that the family, the wife, the children can enjoy it. But it'll be here. It will always be here. And our numbers, although down now, will begin to move back up before long. If you look at the history of Masonry throughout this country, you'll see the cycles, the peaks and the valleys, and they compare completely with church membership. The peaks and the valleys of church membership compare with the peaks and valleys of Masonic membership.
Some people have characterized what will happen in the next few years as to use a common phrase, a leaner, meaner organization. Is that the way you see it turning out?
I do not. I see an organization that must perpetuate itself by more and more charitable activity. We have an awful lot of charitable activities, but we must make people know about them. We can't afford to keep our light under a bushel basket anymore. We must make the world understand what we do and what we believe and what we stand for. We've done a pretty poor job at this. The movement is now beginning, though, to inform the public a lot better than we've been informed them before. I look for a bright future in Masonry because I can see movement in that direction. And there again, I say that it's based more on family values and moral values that people are beginning to move back into, that they moved away from far too much in past years.
What about a young man coming into Masonry? Let's say you went to a Blue Lodge and got involved in a EA degree or a Master Mason's degree, someone just being raised, and the degree's over and everyone's talking, and you go over to congratulate that young man. What would you have to say to him about his Masonic road out ahead of him? What would you tell him?
I think it would depend a great deal on my impression of the young man. If he impressed me as someone who was really sincere in receiving the Masonic degrees, I would immediately congratulate him and encourage him to do as much as he could for the fraternity, to give as much time as he could, because we need him in our lodge. I'm talking about my own lodge now. This happened last Monday night. I conferred an EA degree on a young man. I took his petition, as a matter of fact. And I know this young man will make a tremendous contribution to masonry. You kind of have a feel, I think, for this. I congratulated him, and I told him how fortunate we were to have him as a member, but by the same time, how fortunate he was to have been elected to receive the degrees. It depends on the individual as to what you say to them.
Looking back down the road, going back to your year in the Grand East, your various offices in Scottish Rite and the York Rite, and the years between your EA degree and now, I'll ask you like I have some of the others and got some interesting answers sometimes, but and including the year in the Grand East. Would you do it all again? And why? Or why not?
The year that I served as Grand Master, I was actively operating my oil company, trying to drill wells and take care of all my Masonic obligations. The hardest year I ever spent was that year because of the time element involved. I have many times flown places and driven places to get back to an oil well that might be drilling, for example. When, if you didn't have that obligation standing over your head, the situation that you were involved in would have been a lot more enjoyable. And you ask me if I'd do it again, I don't think so. I would do anything my Grand Lodge asked me to do. But I know right now that I'll never be asked to serve as Grand Master again. And I don't want to ever be asked to serve as Grand Master again. Because we have so many men who are quite capable of doing a tremendous job for the Grand Lodge and for Masonry. We'll never run out of those kind of men. And so that need will never be there. And I can safely say that I would never want to serve as Grand Master again.
In closing, Sam, any thoughts on just anything that you'd care to tell folks about Sam Hillburn that maybe they ought to know, or you think maybe they don't know?
Most people know too much about Sam Hillburn anyway. I could say this, and hopefully an EA may be able to hear it, but the greatest single privilege that can come to any man is to be a Master Mason. If he serves Masonry, serves his church, and serves his community, he will have accomplished a great deal and should be proud of those accomplishments. But to be a Master Mason, in my opinion, is the greatest single privilege that can ever come to any man.
Sam, appreciate you coming today. Thank you very
Bill.
much.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Are you through?
Hey.
We have a prejudice off.
Yeah, we got
audience.
Biography on Sam Hillburn comes from the 1980 proceedings of the Grand Lodge of Texas. There have been a few additions since this biography was written, including the fact that he has been named Sovereign Grand Inspector General for the state of Texas by the Scottish Rite, and also has been named a board member of the board of the Scottish Rite Hospital in Dallas. Sam E. Hillburn was installed as the 141st Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Texas on December 8, 1979. He was born in Grandfield, Oklahoma on June 15, 1921. His early education was in Wichita Falls, Texas, and he graduated from Wichita Falls High School in 1938. He attended Tarleton State University and Texas A&M prior to his military service.